Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kobosko TALKS. I have a very special guest today, and my guest is Teresą Anjinho, the European Ombudswoman. Madame Anjinho is a lawyer, a human rights expert, and an academic specializing in public international law, gender, and equality. She has lectured at European universities and has published a number of scientific papers. Before taking up her current role, she served as a member of the Supervisory Committee of the European Anti-Fraud Office from 22 to 25. She was previously a Deputy Ombudsman of Portugal, her native country. As European Ombudswoman, Teresą Anjinho leads an independent and impartial institution that holds EU bodies and agencies to account and promotes good administration. Her office helps citizens, businesses, and organizations facing problems with the EU administration, investigates complaints about maladministration, and proactively addresses broader systemic issues. While recognizing the EU institutions already meet high administrative standards, she firmly believes they must always strive for the highest possible level, for the benefit of all of us Europeans. Basically, she's the European citizen's voice within the EU institutions. Teresa, great to have you on my program.
It's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be here. Very flattering, the words, and I thank you as well for that. Not only my personal name, but the institution's name.
Thanks again for being with me. And I mentioned the European citizen's voice within the EU institutions. What does that really mean? In what scenarios, when the EU citizens could actually address you, contact you, what kind of issues are in the area of your interest?
Okay, so the European Ombudsman, as you said, is the institution responsible exactly to address issues related to transparency, accountability, and integrity. So any resident in the European Union space, be that someone, a person, an organization, a company that faces problems with the European institution, let's say generally speaking, so it's the so-called EU IBOAs, the institutions, bodies, offices and agencies, if they encounter a problem, they can come to the Ombudsman office. What kind of problem? So lack of access to documents, for example. So if someone is not very happy with the kind of response or the delayed response of an institution, or, for example, a company that is not happy with the procedure related to grants or procurement, or an NGO that is also not happy with the inclusiveness, let's say, of the decision-making process, they can all come to the Ombudsman office. It's a procedure that is informal, that, it's free. It's normally done online. We then look at the complaint, recognizing that the complaint is always an act of trust from someone that actually still believes in the system, and that someone in the system will actually answer. And many times by doing so, we get to the point of making recommendations, suggestions for improvement. And we always give, of course, a reply, exactly to guarantee that this trust that this person or organizations put in the Ombudsman office is, of course, well respected.
So we know pretty well how it works in countries like Poland, where we have our national ombudsman, in Polish, Rzecznik Praw Obywatelskich, that's the name. But how exactly the EU citizen can contact your office and apply for some help?
Very well. So we do have the possibility to be contacted, particularly through the complaint handling system. It's online, so it's the online form. So you go to our website, and in our website, you have immediately visible, because we attach a lot of importance exactly on the awareness and communication, the Make a Complaint. In the Make a Complaint online form, you already have a lot of questions that allow the person to know our mandate, if the complaint, if the problem that he or she has is a problem that is within the mandate of the office. If it is within the mandate, and even if it is not, it will always receive an answer.
Can you give examples of very specific ideas or the problems that people have contacted you recently? What kind of problems do European citizens have with the EU administration?
Very well. So many of them, and I have to refer, is the access to documents. So transparency is very high in our agenda. And in the access to documents, we're talking about journalists, but also researchers that want to have access to certain documents. For, in the case of journalists, of course, the reporting and the important oversight that these journalists do when it comes to the work of the European Union institutions. And I mean, a delayed information is many times for these people a denied information because they need to report immediately. So the access to documents is very high in terms of complaints, also because it is recognized as a very specific competence of the Ombudsman Office. We receive the complaint, we always address the other institutions, exactly because, and thank you very much, because it allows me to say, we are not the advocates in the sense we do not work to the complainants, we do not work for the institutions, we work for the good administration. So we share the complaint with the institution, we hear the institution's arguments, and then, of course, by confronting, we try to come up with a solution. In the access to documents, we have the possibility of looking at the documents. So as you know, institutions, the default will be transparency. So there is an obligation from the institutions to disclose. Nevertheless, there are exceptions and justified exceptions. What happens is that we have the possibility to inspect the documents ourselves and also attest in terms of veracity to the complainants that, well, the exceptions are being rigorously applied by the institutions. So here you go. It's a very good example of our work.
It's a really very good example of your work since, look, the EU administration is basically seen by the EU citizens as being pretty distant, pretty far from the average life and average citizen. And this adds to the rising wave of the Euroscepticism.
Very good.
And that's the problem. So in what way your office can help fighting this feeling among the citizens that EU institutions are somewhere there and people are here. So a huge distance between the real problems of ordinary people and the EU super institutions.
That's why it's so important for people to see you in doing exactly what you're doing and to see me exactly in terms of awareness. I believe that we are living a deficit of trust, not as before. Before you would hear a lot about the trust in the European project per se. I don't think that we are there. We are no longer there. People do trust in the importance of the European project. We have a deficit of trust when it comes to the institutions and what the institutions do or not do, because more than ever, we have a growing competence of the European Union in areas that actually are very important for the citizens. And the citizens want to know more, and they also want to participate. It is my belief that most of the times, citizens complain not because they do not acknowledge the importance of rules, but because they do not know them. It's very complex, or they feel left behind by them because they do not reflect the exact problems that they do have in their home countries. So many times the decision-making process in the European Union is felt not as a result of a long democratic process, but as a mixture of member states horse trading or technocracy or lobby or just Brussels telling the states what they have to do. And what can I do and what do I do as European Ombudsman? I feel that it's also my mission, together with the institutions, to show the European citizens that actually the European Union is not only working for the public interest, but also abides by the highest standards of transparency, accountability, and integrity. And I can do that in two ways. First of all, by showing that I exist, that I'm there, that I can receive complaints, that institutions can be accountable, and when I answer, of course, demystify a little bit how it works, and at the same time also showing that institutions voluntarily respond to citizens' needs without having a court telling them mandatorily, what to do. They acknowledge that sometimes there might be errors, that, standards might slip, or that also sometimes it's time to change the rules because not everything that is fair is in the law, or not everything that is in the law is fair. And this is very important because citizens will see that institutions are willing to change for them, to acknowledge they are responsive. The responsiveness of institutions today is paramount for that strengthening of the trust.
Yes, you're repeating about the lack of trust, which is one of the key problems nowadays. And specifically, I would say that applies to the youths, to the younger generation of Europeans. So do you have ideas how to address this very specific group of the EU citizens who generally do not trust anybody, not to mention the EU institutions, but do you have an offer to them specifically, how to address their problems and their doubts?
Okay, I think that the most important is certainly the issue of communication. I said that before. I think it's one of the main challenges, generally speaking, but specifically to the European youth. We need clear communications, and institutions need to understand that the European Union is already a very complex architecture that is difficult, even for us that work here, sometimes to explain exactly what institutions do. So they need, at least when they communicate with the public, to make this extra effort to communicate. You know that sometimes, and that's exactly what I see, the European Ombudsman has a role of a kind of a qualified translator of the complaints that we receive, because they relate to this lack of communication, not exactly to the substance of the complaint. And for the youth, I think this is really very important. And then to make extra efforts of awareness. I also believe that when you go to them, I try to do that. I go often to universities. Whenever I am challenged to do so or invited, I go there. I think they are the perfect multipliers, not only because of acknowledging the message, but also understanding that Brussels is not that far away. Actually, it was there with them, and putting a face next to the institution is very important, because you will relate more with that institution, feel it closer. And then, of course, communication, awareness. I have to say also we have to do more in terms of accessibility, in guaranteeing youth participation, like the conference for Europe that was organized, and be consequent on what we do. So the follow-up of these initiatives are so important, because they will wait for that. What have you done with our proposals? So you heard, you cannot do anything about it, but at least say so. So this kind of honesty and consequential behavior that gives importance to them, because we are asking them to be important. We are saying to them, listen, you have a voice, and your voice doesn't stop with the vote. You continue. You are even able to participate, like the European Citizens Initiative. Then we have to be consequential with that important strength that we are giving to these participatory instruments, particularly when they are directed to the youth.
These are great ideas, I must say, because we have, again, we have this problem with the lack of interest or lack of trust, but we do also have a rising problem with the disinformation around and among Europeans and around Europe. Do you have ideas how your office can help fighting the disinformation, or just addressing the issue and providing the truth, the facts to the citizens? Do you have a role here?
I do. Actually, my entire mandate, because when I work for transparency, when I work for accountability, I'm already working for, to fight against disinformation. I'm already telling institutions there's no way going back. You need to be proactive transparently in terms of transparency. Why? Because in a very, let's say, complex information structure that you have in the European Union, you not only have to be able to disclose entirely, proactively the documents, but also, again, to speak honestly with the citizens. Because that's the only way to fight this disinformation in reality, in the end of the day. So when it comes to access to documents, even though I recognize that it's very burdensome towards the institutions, we have to acknowledge its importance, because anything that is not disclosed is considered today as hidden, as being hidden. And second, very important, opens the door to disinformation. So to fight this, to always stress the importance of clear communication, of doing awareness-raising initiatives, and a pro-transparency culture in the European Union at all levels, I think it's already indirectly a very important work towards this fight that is a collective fight against disinformation.
Before we wrap up, a bit of personal question. Your main office is here in Strasbourg, Alsace, France. I want to ask you how your typical working day looks like, and how do you feel working here in Strasbourg, not in Brussels mainly, as I understand.
Yes. Very good. Very nice question. So there's no typical work, quite honestly, or day of work for me.
Days differs a lot.
Differs a lot, yes. As European Ombudswoman, I do divide my work a little bit. Case handling, dialogue, meeting with colleagues, dialogue with institutions, and also reaching out to the public and doing a little bit of awareness as well, as, for example, I'm doing here. Whenever I have time to disconnect a little bit, because, I mean, our lives, they are professional, but they are professional, they're personal, and they're family. And I try to have a little bit of balance between the three because, I mean, I think that my own personal balance comes exactly from this equilibrium. So whenever I can disconnect in terms of my personal time, I try to read, I try to walk or run. Less today.
Are you traveling back to Portugal for weekends?
I am. My family's still there. I still have my kid, the third one, I have three, is still very small and is still finishing the 4th grade, so is still there. So I'm doing the commuting for a while now. I hope that then they will be able to come with me. But I manage. I mean, with organization is something that is not that difficult. And Strasbourg is the center, I would say, even of this human rights culture. And apart from that, it's a beautiful town that, well, gives me also the reflective scenarios to discharge a little bit sometimes the pressure that I have in my daily life as a European Ombudswoman.
Teresa, many thanks for being with me, accepting my invitation. Teresą Anjinho, the European Ombudswoman, was my very special guest today. Thanks very much for watching our program, Kobosko Talks. See you next time.